Have you ever been read by someone who felt more like a scanner? They weren't connecting, they were calibrating. Ever walked away from warmth and still felt something cold underneath? If that sounds familiar, this one's for you. You were sitting across from someone at dinner or standing next to them at a gathering. They said something about you so specific it felt rehearsed. That was the test. Today we're decoding 7 signs someone isn't a kind empath. They're a dark one. Sign 4 is the one that makes people go quiet. The last sign isn't something they do, it's something you stop doing. Watch closely. Nadja Heym is a personality psychologist at Nottingham Trent University. In 2021, her team published a study that changed how researchers think about empathy. They found that roughly 13% of people score high on empathy and high on dark personality traits at the same time. Narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. Not the Hollywood version, the everyday version, the kind that shows up at brunch and remembers your birthday. Paulhus and Williams had already named those 3 traits the Dark Triad. Heym added a 4th ingredient, empathy, and that changed everything. Because a dark empath doesn't lack feeling, they have too much of it. The difference between a kind empath and a dark one isn't how much they feel, it's what they do with what they feel. Empathy isn't always a kindness. Sometimes it's a key. Hannah was at a work dinner. 8:30 p.m., second round of drinks. The table halfway between too loud and just right. Someone she barely knew leaned in and said something about her work ethic. Not the generic, "you're so dedicated" kind. The kind that touched something she hadn't told anyone she was proud of. She glowed. And you think to yourself, how did they know that? Most people wouldn't question it. But here's what a dark empath understands that most people don't. Compliments aren't just gifts, they're scans. A kind empath notices your effort because they felt it alongside you. A dark empath notices it because they've already mapped what matters to you and they know where the soft spots are. You felt this. Someone said something that landed so precisely it felt less like hearing and more like being opened. And you didn't question it because it felt good. That's the whole design. Gratitude, aimed right, is leverage. You've met someone who seemed to think exactly like you. Same frustrations, same humor, same quiet opinions you usually keep to yourself. It felt like finding a rare match. That recognition is real. And that's what makes this sign hard to catch. A dark empath mirrors you. Precisely, they match your pacing, your tone, even the rhythm of your pauses. But here's where it shifts. Once the mirror is in place, they start tilting it. A small suggestion here, a subtle redirect there. You don't notice the moment you stopped leading the conversation and started following it. Or, actually, it's more specific than that. You don't notice because the tilt feels like agreement, like they're just building on what you said. But track the outcome of those conversations over time. Where did the decisions land? Whose preferences won? They didn't mirror to find common ground. They mirrored to dissolve yours. And the scariest part isn't that they steered, it's that you felt like you chose. This sign almost didn't make the list. Because on the surface, it looks like charm. They're funny, genuinely funny, quick, observant, sharp in a way that makes rooms orbit around them. Most people miss this, but pay attention to where the laughter lands. Kai was in a team meeting, Tuesday morning, 10:15 a.m., the slide with the quarterly numbers. Someone cracked a joke about the font choice. Everyone laughed. Kai laughed too, but the joke wasn't about the font. It was about Kai's preparation, and everyone in the room processed it as humor except the person it targeted. Heym's research found that dark empaths score significantly higher on indirect aggression than both typical empaths and even classic dark triad types. The aggression doesn't announce itself. It wears a punchline, and it always lands in front of an audience because the audience is what makes it work. The room laughs, the target absorbs it, and the dark empath walks away looking like the most charming person there. Nobody called it cruelty. It came wrapped in a laugh. This is the one that makes people go quiet. Theo had been texting someone for weeks. Deep conversations, the kind that stretch past midnight. Then one morning, nothing. No fight, no explanation, just silence. 3 days later, the messages came back as if nothing happened, and Theo, without deciding to, adjusted. Started being more careful, more agreeable, more watchful of what might trigger another disappearance. And you think to yourself, they reach out when they have time. But that's not what happened. What happened was intermittent reinforcement. Same mechanism behind slot machines. Unpredictable reward. Warmth given freely doesn't create anxiety. Warmth given and removed on a schedule does. The dark empath doesn't need to threaten. They just need to disappear for 72 hours and let your imagination do the rest. You start monitoring your own behavior, replaying what you said last, wondering which version of you gets them back. The cycle tightens one notch each time. Sit with this for a moment. If you're still watching, the next two signs are the ones most people never name out loud. Riley told them something real once. A quiet confession over drinks about a parent she'd stopped speaking to. The other person listened the way people listen when they want you to keep going. Eyes steady, body angled in, no rush to respond. It felt like the safest conversation Riley had had in months. So she asked, almost casually, "What about you? Anything like that in your family?" And the answer she got was warm, sympathetic, and completely empty. Yeah, families are complicated. That was it. Take a step back. Think about the people you've opened up to. What do you actually know about them? Not what they've mentioned in passing. What do you know that cost them something to say? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The information always flows one direction. A dark empath builds intimacy like a one-way mirror. You see yourself reflected. You can't see through. They know your pressure points, your soft corners, every line you'd cross under the right circumstances. They might say something like, "Honestly, I've been off this week." Sounds personal. Vague enough to feel intimate without revealing anything real. Maya confronted someone about something real, something that had been building for weeks. She raised her voice, not out of anger, out of exhaustion. And the response she got was measured, calm, almost clinical. "You seem really upset. Maybe we should talk about this when you're feeling calmer." Now Maya is the emotional one, the unreasonable one, and the person across from her, composed, every single time. A dark empath doesn't need to win the argument. They need to win the frame. They provoke, then present your reaction as evidence. Your frustration becomes proof that you're the unstable one. Your boundaries become proof that you're overreacting. Quick tangent. This isn't the same as someone genuinely staying calm during conflict. That's regulation. What makes this a dark empath sign is the pattern. They're always composed, and you're always the one who looks like they lost control. The composure isn't peace. It's a strategy so quiet, nobody else in the room can see it working. This is the last sign. And it's not something they do. It's something you stop doing. You used to say what you thought. You used to text without rereading 5 times. You used to trust the first version of yourself that showed up in a room. Then, slowly, without a single dramatic moment, you started rehearsing, editing, softening things before they left your mouth. The message you drafted 3 times before sending the easiest version. The opinion you swallowed because last time you shared one, it became a conversation you didn't want to have again. And you think to yourself, maybe I'm overthinking it. You're not. The pattern doesn't lie. A dark empath's deepest effect isn't what they do to you. It's what they make you do to yourself. You become your own surveillance system, watching, adjusting, trimming the parts of yourself that might trigger a withdrawal or a well-aimed joke or a measured, clinical calm. A kind empath makes you feel safe enough to be unfiltered. A dark empath makes you feel watched enough to filter everything. And the hardest part is you barely notice. You just wake up one morning and realize the person you are around them isn't quite you anymore. Now zoom out. 7 signs. But not really 7 separate things. They're one pattern showing itself 7 different ways. The compliment, the mirroring, the humor, the withdrawal, the secrecy, the composure, the editing. They all point to the same core. Empathy aimed sideways. Not toward you, through you. A dark empath doesn't lack feeling. That's the whole point. They feel exactly what you need, exactly when you're vulnerable, exactly where the boundary softens, and they use that. Empathy isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a skeleton key someone uses to open every room you thought was locked. That line might sting. It should. But here's what comes after the sting. A dark empath doesn't always act out of cruelty. Sometimes it's habit. Sometimes it's the only way they learn to stay close to people without getting hurt themselves. The effect on you is the same, but recognizing the pattern doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you literate. If you've ever sat with that quiet unease after being around someone who should have felt safe but didn't, now you have a framework for what you were noticing. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, reading people isn't paranoia. It's a skill worth having. Until next time, stay observant.